Welcome to Built to Work, the podcast that gets its hands dirty, dives into the grit, and uncovers the heart of what makes the blue-collar world tick. I'm Colin, your host, and I'm sitting down with the people who keep our world running. From those tackling the tough jobs no one else dares to do, to the HR professionals working overtime to find the labor force we desperately need. Whether you're in the trenches or behind the scenes, this podcast is for anyone who values hard work, determination, and stories that build the backbone of our workforce. So grab your gloves, your coffee, or your clipboard. It's time to get to work. Welcome to another episode of the Built to Work podcast. Today I am here with somebody that I consider a friend now after knowing her for a while, Jennifer Betts. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Colin. It's been wonderful getting to know you over the past maybe year or so at this
Something
point.
like that.
I know.
Yeah,
and so
time flies when you're having
congratulations.
fun.
Yes. And congratulations
Oh,
on your latest podcast. I know this is not your first, so
yeah.
love to see the empire growing.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been good to kind of get back into it. I did a lot with the last business and starting to get into it with this one's kind of been fun again. It's like, okay, now I remember how I did all this stuff. So I took a hiatus, but now it's back out there to grind it out a little bit more. So
Exactly.
well, you obviously are all over social media. You're all over LinkedIn, Instagram, preaching, recycling, the metals industry, and you are a wealth of knowledge. And as we've gotten to know each other, it's just, I've been impressed by how much you've known, how many people your involvement in the industry. And as we started talking, we discovered that we actually grew up like very close to each other, went to like
Yes.
rival high schools basically, here in Kansas City area. And now you're all the way in California,
hmm
right? Living the dream, going out west. I'm still here in the Kansas City area though. So
Yeah, it's crazy. I think when we first met and I learned that you were more or less down the street from where my parents still live, it was kind of crazy to find out that full circle, X number of
mhm.
years later, that our paths would cross, and yet never knew it growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely didn't think I was going to be in the metals industry. I don't know about you.
Same. Nope. And what's crazy is that I come from a family of engineers, and I
Hmm.
was the quote black sheep because I went into business. I was not going to be an engineer. I was not going to go into metallurgy because my dad actually has a metallurgy degree. Absolutely was not going to do that. And so now I think he's having a little bit of a chuckle at what I do for a living now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. And that's funny because I went into engineering in college, and after unceremoniously getting asked to not work for a couple different places, started my own business, and now I'm in this industry. So engineering and metals, I guess there's just a connection that way. So,
A little bit, a little
but
bit.
now I'm doing the business thing too. So I think that's the way to go.
I completely agree. I think there's a little bit of fun, a little bit of stress, but you get to take the knowledge that you've learned and create something out of it and be able to utilize your network, utilize the tools. And it's really fascinating to be able to do that and see something that you've created grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've got your own company, Magnar
Mhm.
Metals.
Mhm.
Tell us about what Magnar does.
It is a digital marketing, PR, and business scouting firm. So I specialize in essentially taking the past couple decades of my metals career and I help solve people's commercial problems. It's been really fascinating having my network grow over the course of my career to essentially the full supply chain in the industry
Mhm.
where the individuals and the companies that come across my desk range from scientists and professors at universities at the cutting edge of AI and metallurgy to documentary individuals that are trying to raise sunken ships off the East Coast and they don't have the connections to essentially recycle that ship but they also want to make sure that they can economically benefit from it
Yeah.
as well. And so it's just really quite fascinating what
Yeah.
happens these days.
Yeah. That's you are exposed to a lot of cool things. So how did business degree Jennifer go from that end up to sunken ships and technical expertise? How did that journey happen?
It's kind of interesting because your background in real estate is connected a little bit to my finance degree. My finance degree in college from Indiana University, go Hoosiers, is actually has a specialty in real estate. I thought I was going into commercial real estate. I thought I was going into flipping. I thought I was going down that path. And that did not happen.
No?
I very much took a, a different turn. The easiest answer is career fair. My
Okay.
senior year of college, there was a line for a particular company that I was waiting for at a career fair. And next door to that company at the career fair was the David J. Joseph Company. And there
Okay.
was a particular trader who more or less grabbed me out of that line and started talking to me and started telling me about what they did. And at the time, I thought, well, I'll use them as interview practice. And so
Hmm.
I started going through the whole process. And the more and more I learned about what they did and the opportunity, it dawned on me that all of my fellow graduates in the business school would be in cubicles. They'd be working horrendous hours. They'd probably be going to New York or Chicago or somewhere where it's on the train to and from. I wouldn't be doing that. All of a
Okay.
sudden, I would be getting a company car, an expense account, a book of business, and then I would be told, go, go travel, go meet with people, go explore and figure it out. And
That's awesome.
that seemed way more appealing than what my finance degree was really gearing me towards investment banking and those
Oh yeah,
types
yeah.
of career paths. I fully did not know what I agreed to when I signed up with the David J. Joseph Company. I did not know. I didn't know what scrap metal was. I did not know really what steel mills were. I'd never gone to one by that point.
Yeah.
So when I started at DJJ, they weren't owned by Nucor then. I
Okay.
actually started as a non-ferrous trader. So I bought and sold truckloads of aluminum cans,
There you
copper,
go.
stainless steel. I had no idea that that's what I was doing, but with the finance background, I was hedging off of the LME, the London Metal Exchange, the CME, Chicago Mercantile before it was bought by the NYMEX back then. And then eventually Nucor bought DJJ. And that's really when my career shifted over towards the ferrous side of the industry. And so that's how majority of my career has actually been on the steel side of things. When I started managing raw material programs for steel mills, when I shifted over to AK Steel, that's when integrated facilities, because Nucor's electric arc furnaces,
Hmm.
ferroalloys shifted in there at AK Steel as well. And so that's kind of where a lot of my experiences come into play just by things happening throughout my career.
Just happy. It's totally unexpected.
Yes,
Yeah.
I did not know that I would learn this much about science and metallurgy as a finance major in college.
Mhm. Well, I guess we never know really what's in store for us as we kind of go down that path.
No,
Yeah.
the degrees get you in the door, and have I really used that finance degree?
Mm,
Mm,
maybe.
maybe, maybe a
Maybe.
little,
Yeah.
maybe not so much.
And I
So,
think aside from getting like a degree in metallurgy, like your dad, or where I went to school in Rolla, Missouri, that's a big engineering school, you can also get I don't know, some sort of mining metallurgy degree or something like that. I never paid any attention to it, right? I wanted to design buildings. right? I wanted to build buildings. Um, but yeah, having that education like get you in the door, we learn a little bit about it, but this is like a very much hands-on, on the job learning industry. Like you're not going to figure it out from a textbook.
No, absolutely not. There's so many different grades of, we'll call it scrap or recycled materials as we now call it. But when I started, it was scrap.
Uh-huh.
There's different types of metals. It's all different types of products. Every mill has its own type of specifications that go into the melt
Hmm.
shop. Every melt shop is different. It, there are standards that exist out there from a general sense, but how do you convey to someone what the feeling of that heat feels like when the charge bucket drops, you know, all those tons into a furnace?
Hmm.
You can't, right? You have to
Yeah.
go and experience these things.
Yeah, that's one of those things that's hands-on. I was very thankful in my education. They did a lot of hands-on, like very, very practical engineering school to an extent. Um, but one of the hands-on we got was going to not metals. We actually got to go to a wastewater treatment facility. Do not recommend hands-on that sort of experience. Not enjoyable.
Uh, it makes you appreciate
Yeah,
what you do for a living,
yeah,
though, as
absolutely.
well.
Yeah, I'll take
Yes.
I'll take hot metal any day. So,
Uh,
um, so how long have you been doing Magnar?
so I started Magnar back in 2016.
Okay.
Back in 2016, for 4 years, it was mainly focused on trading scrap metal. It was mainly focused on essentially taking the previous decade of experience as essentially a mill buyer
Hmm.
and taking that knowledge and helping scrapyards renegotiate their contracts with the steel mills.
Oh,
So
really?
I helped scrapyards renegotiate their monthly scrap contracts, renegotiate their transportation contracts. I had them take a look at essentially their commercial strategies. Should they be going to their existing consumers? Are there other opportunities? It really was more of a strategy consulting company at that time versus today, it's more of, okay, how do you build your network? How do you build brand awareness? In today's age, what are your goals as a business? And how do you use today's tools to achieve that?
Hmm.
Because so much of what worked yesterday or what worked 5 years ago in our industry is not necessarily working anymore.
Okay.
So that's more of what's changed from the Magnar of, 8, 9 years ago to today.
Hmm. Okay. So from the brand awareness and the marketing standpoint, if you could give away some free information, unpaid consulting, what's the biggest thing that's changed in how people need to approach that brand awareness from 2020 pre-COVID to now?
The biggest thing pre-COVID to now, and I say this from our industry, the metals industry, the
Hmm.
scrap industry, is straight up just make yourself and your company known. It
Okay.
sounds so simple, but yet in our industry, from a historical standpoint, the thought process, and it just was, we wanted to be under the radar. We didn't advertise. We didn't really want people to know about our industry. It was something that, for historical reasons, it did make sense. People didn't know about the scrap industry,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that worked for generations. It doesn't work anymore. There's legislation that is written that doesn't make sense. It goes against the actual intentions of the legislation because there's a lack of knowledge of what our industry actually does because it's been under the radar. There is a lack of employees
Hmm.
because people are not aware that this is a career, that there are opportunities here. There's also a misunderstanding of what recycling actually is. again, because there's been a lack of awareness. So the simplest, easiest, free advice is just start marketing yourself in whatever way is authentic to you. Is that posting photos of your business online, photos of you on travels for work online? Is it writing a blog? Is it producing a podcast? Is it being a guest on a podcast?
Hmm.
Is it just commenting on other people's posts within the industry just to
Hmm.
start creating awareness? Something to get people aware that our industry exists, that you exist, because you need an electronic footprint. You need something,
Yeah.
because that's how we communicate now.
Okay. That is some great free advice, and thank you for that. And everybody will appreciate that. And it is amazing how much that's changed. And you said a couple things there that I kind of want to unpack. And the first one is, um, first off, the way you do stuff, right? Talking about legislation. I love the content you put out because you're always like, hey, how is this going to affect this? Or, hey, this is what's going on with some legislation. Or recently it's been tariffs and all sorts of stuff like that. You're like, what are the impacts that's going to have? And I don't want to open that can of worms because I'm sure you have so much on that. But it's great to see how that, oh, how's this going to impact this or that? Or, who's getting bought and sold, right? You've been talking about the Nippon Steel deal, no deal saga that's going on. Who knows what's going on with
Mm-hmm.
that? So that's great, and I love. I mean, that's talking about being uniquely you. I feel like you're the person in the metals industry that does that, and obviously, I don't know everybody in the metals industry, but it's not that huge of a circle at the end of the day. Um, Especially if you kind of start consolidating past what I, for lack of a better term, like a mom and pop size scrapyard. Once you kind of get above that, and the people that are actually producing content and talking about stuff on a high level, there's you know there's a handful.
Yes, exactly. And what's interesting too is I am not the expert on everything in the industry. But because I put myself out there, the experts on individual areas in the industry find
Hmm.
me. And so that allows me to get connected with the people that have the answers. And
Yeah,
so I can learn from them. And when a company or a consulting opportunity comes my way with questions, I'm able to connect them with the people that have the answers.
yeah,
Because a lot of the times, the people that are the experts that have the answers are not marketing themselves.
yeah. It's true.
So if we were out there a little bit more and showcase what we did and showed how we got hooked on the industry, imagine how many more people would get interested in our industry
Hmm.
if we showcased what we loved about it.
Yeah. And I will say that different parts of the industry definitely make for very eye-catching photos on any social media. I mean, I saw you doing your top 10 posts of 2024, right? And there was, I mean, just everything was really, really cool. Some other people we know, they're always, multiple photos a day of their trucks or their loads. Those photos are super cool. I mean, everybody's putting out different content. Michael Goldstein's always out there with the inflatable unicorn for all the 2 million cans and everything. So there's some really cool stuff that people are doing out there that is uniquely their brand voice. So I can really appreciate that.
Yes. And
Uh,
that's really what hits home is that it's about being your authentic self. What makes you passionate about your industry, your job? That is what people will find interesting
mhm.
because even though you may not find it necessarily interesting that you think, oh, everybody must do this, or maybe you think it's because it's become normal, air quote, normal to
Yeah,
you. What we do, no matter whether or not it's loading the trucks every day, melting scrap every day, even getting to travel to DC to go up to the hill, every day, right?
Yeah.
That's not normal to most people. And so by sharing a little bit about what we do to the masses, that is interesting to people
Yeah.
and
No,
they
it
will
really is.
interact with it.
Yeah. I mean, I had not been exposed to torching, which is obviously what we do now until we had purchased this company. And, I see photos of the torching and we post them online, and I'm still like, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool, right? Fire, sparks, molten metal, like, oh, that's cool. And I think other people appreciate that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, we even talked about torching before we started hitting record, and we
Yeah.
were geeking out about some of the technology that we were talking
Yeah,
about
we're totally nerding out.
torching wise. And torching is something that happens in our industry every day, but even new technology coming
Yeah.
into the industry on something that should be normal
Hmm.
makes it fun again for us.
Yeah,
So
that
imagine
does.
if somebody else that doesn't see something like that every day, if they saw it.
Yeah. The other thing you'd said previously was we didn't want people to know about the scrap industry. And I feel like that's kind of, there's a little, maybe a little bit, and since I'm new to it, you might have to correct me on this, or anybody else that's out there. Is there a little bit of a checkered past with the scrap industry, maybe with some ties or something like that before it got
There
big?
there is. So we're going to have to go back at this point probably 125-ish years. And when there was a lot of essentially boxing out of available employment at that time, where immigration coming into the United States, there was, we'll we'll call it what it is. It was essentially racism in terms of who got what jobs. And at that time, there were certain positions in manufacturing in that world that Jews were not allowed to
Hmm.
partake in. So, to make a living when they came to the States, they started picking up all the scraps, whether that be the rags, cloth rags outside of manufacturing facilities, whether that's the metallic content outside the facilities. And so they wanted to figure out how to make a living. And they found out that those items had value if they collected them and figured out a way to add value to them by processing them into a way that
Hmm.
then could go back to the consumers in a new form.
Okay.
And so there is this sentiment that occurred out of that time period 125 years ago, where if nobody messed with us and nobody realized that because of that not so great start, where
Hmm.
they were boxed out of traditional employment, that if they were able to build essentially these now legacy companies, nobody would realize how successful they became from that. And
Hmm.
if nobody really realized what they were doing over there, um, nobody would mess with them from a legislative situation. Nobody would really mess with them from a community standpoint. They would just be able to keep to themselves, be able to run their business, and just everybody would be happy over there, happy over here. And that worked for many decades. I mean, it they were able to work with manufacturers, pick up their scraps, process it, return
Yeah.
it. Everybody was great until things started to turn a little bit, where then you started getting some of the rise of the metal prices,
Hmm.
and then you started having copper theft. And
Yeah.
then you started having some catalytic converter theft.
Yeah.
And then you started having some other not so great events that were outside of their control, where legislation had good intentions to try and reduce those criminal activities,
Yeah.
but it also had negative effects on their business. But because they had been under the radar for so long, they hadn't established those community relationships. They hadn't established those relationships with lawmakers. And so there was this lack of education within the
Yeah.
community of how they were benefiting and making sure that the infrastructure and the manufacturing in the United States was being supported. I mean, just for reference, today, we're flash forwarding. Today, the United States manufacturing industry, 40% of the raw materials that they use made from recycled materials.
Yeah.
Just
That's amazing to me. And
yeah.
it's amazing to think about, we think of recycling largely when I think of recycling, most people do. They're taking their blue bin out to the curb
Mhm.
or, I live in the country, so we don't have a blue bin. If they're still that color, maybe they're green now. I don't know. But that's what they think of a recycling. And
Mhm.
while there is so much that's done through that, I think that people that aren't involved in the industry don't understand the scale of just the industrial recycling that goes on, right? Like on the torching side of things, what do you do when you have a an excavator that's dead, right? That needs to be recycled. You can't just doesn't melt itself, right? It has to be cut into pieces so that it can be melted and the manufacturers then that are have skeleton plate after they've stamped or cut everything out. Where does that all go? I mean, the
Mhm.
industrial scale produces so much volume that the person recycling their glass bottles and their aluminum cans doesn't even understands out there.
Not at all. One of the figures that I love to throw out there for people is you think about the number every year, particularly for the United States, of how many cars we sell.
Hmm.
And I haven't looked at what 2024 ended up being, but usually in the past few years, it's been anywhere from 13, 15 million cars a year we've been selling. Haven't been that great. I don't think we've gotten back up to pre-COVID levels.
Okay.
But you know what we do do every year? 17 million cars are shredded and put back into
17.
furnaces in the United States.
17 million cars.
We don't even sell the same amount of cars we shred in the United States that we sell and make.
Now, that just brings up so many questions I have, and are we running low on our auto supply, or did we have this stockpile of junk cars that are getting shredded now? Now it's just, it's like
Yes,
housing inventory, right? They're not selling them or building them as fast as they're needing them. So, there's,
well,
there's,
I'm sure some people have probably driven by a few fields in their day and seen some cars with grass growing up through
yeah.
them.
Oh yeah.
So,
I know some of those fields. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So, where would those cars go if we didn't actually use them?
Yeah, no, I have no idea. It's funny. It wasn't until after I'd bought this business that the first time I ever went to a scrapyard as a customer. So and because I never had the need, but now I live in the country and over the last 10 years of living at this house and the farm, I started accumulating, some metal here, some metal there. And I was like, we built a new barn, so we tore down the old one. So I had like uncovered all my stuff. I was like, okay, I gotta do something with this. And so me and my son, we loaded up our trailer and took it there to the one that's, 10 minutes, 15 minutes from my house. And it was a really cool experience to do it from the customer side. Now I brought in 1,000 pounds or whatever it was. It wasn't a ton, 1,500 pounds maybe, but it was still cool to go through that side. It's like, okay, I know what it's like on the inside. This is what it's like coming from the outside
Yes.
to
And
experience that.
and that's most people. Most people have never been to a scrapyard because
Yeah.
why would they need to? The residential recycling programs are out there, and so people think, "Oh, I'll just put it into the bin."
Yeah.
And I have to comment on this because The MRFs, the material recovery facilities, the blue bin, if you will, are honestly, in my opinion, a big reason why people think recycling is a scam in the United States.
Okay.
And it's because there is no unified federal standard for MRFs. So the MRF that could be nearest to you, if you
Hmm.
had a residential recycling program, the one that could be in your neighborhood, and I could be the city next door because you're in the Kansas City metro, and State
Yeah.
Line Road is obviously
Yep.
a good marker for this. They could have two completely different MRFs.
Hmm.
One could be the latest, greatest AI, unbelievable, one that could take trash bags, plastic trash bags full of glass, plastic, metal, aluminum cans, the whole 9 yards, and be able to actually process that trash bag full of all those recyclable items. And
Hmm.
then literally across the State Line Road could be
Yeah.
another MRF that when that same trash bag full of recyclable items comes across, it can't handle it. And that trash bag gets shoved off into the landfill pile. And so
Hmm.
people have this misconception that, oh, well, then recycling must be a scam because then it's just going to wind up in the landfill anyway. It it's not going to wind up in the landfill because it's quote recycling as a scam. It's going to wind up because we don't have the infrastructure that's standardized to be able to handle everything the
Yeah.
way that people put into the bins.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. Um, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. And honestly, at points in time, I had thought about those two bins too. It's like, man, I think it all just goes to the same landfill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's no, it's a common thought. I
Yeah.
was recently asked to speak about recycling to essentially an oil and gas conference.
Hmm.
Rough crowd, okay?
I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was.
Rough crowd.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can understand the industrial recycling, right? Because that's what I'm in. And I can understand, okay, great. We're talking about auto shredders. We have guys that pick after auto shredders, right? So
Mhm.
they're hand picking any of the last things to make sure we have a pure product. But then we also cut stuff. And regardless, all this stuff is, we know it is going to get remelted. It's not going
Yes,
to a landfill. So that's the part of the recycling. I'm like, I can wrap my mind around this one because we see it, we touch it. It's part of what we do on a daily basis. But putting stuff in the blue bin and then the blue bin disappears is that's it is it just there's a lot of questions because you never know.
exactly. You mentioned Nippon earlier. For those
Hmm.
that may not be aware that's listening to it, Nippon is a Japanese-based steel company. They're actually the fourth largest steel company in the world. So pretty huge. Like they are very technologically advanced, very fascinating company. But obviously, from some historical perspectives, Japan versus us, there's some history there.
Yeah.
They wanted to buy the United States Steel Corporation, which is the third largest steel company in the United States. And you alluded to it. Will they, won't they, will they, won't they? Both
Yeah.
sides of the aisle don't really want that to happen. But what's interesting about that, both sides of the aisle have cited national security as the reason why they do not want Nippon Steel, a Japanese-based company, to purchase the third largest steel company. And I find that interesting because they're citing national security, which implies that we would need to make steel alloys for the Defense Department, right?
Hmm.
But here's the thing. We rely as a country, the United States, almost 100% on magnesium imports.
Okay.
Magnesium, which by the way, you can look this up on the United States Geological Society, USGS. They do about every 2 to 4 years a economic and national security study of the minerals that are critical to our supply chains. There's 50 now, by the way. So
Oh, great.
yeah, not great. 4 years ago, it was 35. So we're not doing great. We increased it by 15 in the past 4 years. So magnesium is one of them. And magnesium goes into steel alloys to
Hmm.
make defense products. And we're almost exclusively reliant on that for imports. You know what's in? aluminum cans.
Just gonna guess magnesium.
Correct. The amount of magnesium, albeit small, in aluminum cans, but the amount of magnesium that's in aluminum cans and just the aluminum cans that we send to the landfills every single year in the United States, if we captured those aluminum cans, that would eliminate our dependence on imports as a country.
Now, see, that's the narrative that we need. I would never have known that. Nobody else would ever know that.
No. So the whole national security thing, it doesn't matter if Nippon buys us or not, right? Like,
Hmm.
I shouldn't say us, US Steel Corp, right? It doesn't matter because if we can't get the magnesium, we still
Yeah,
can't make the defense steel alloys
yeah,
because we're literally throwing our defense abilities into the landfills.
yeah. Those things don't get talked about. I
No,
mean, and now I see, coming full circle, why you advocate so much for and educate so much on social media. Because
yes.
if I mean, you should just do a whole talking point on that. You probably have, but that's man. Now I'm gonna go dig every aluminum can I've thrown in the trash can out and take it to the Department of Defense or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, there is actually a bill going through Congress currently. It is S 351
Okay,
that is backed by the Department of Defense.
okay,
It is for additional funding, it's for grants for adding additional MRFs, material recovery facilities,
okay.
to target specifically the recovery of critical minerals necessary for the Department of Defense. They're well aware we have a problem.
Yeah,
Well aware, but they're not
there's
advertising it. They're not doing that.
uh, why aren't they advertising it? Then becomes a bigger question. But who knows, right? Do they not want people to know? But I mean, they're publishing the list, so everybody already knows anyway.
But I mean, who knows about the lists? Unless you're a metallurgist or
Yeah.
maybe a metal geek like the Marvelous Mrs. Metals,
Hmm.
would you necessarily know that the list exists?
I would never have known the list exists. I figured lithium was probably on that list because of all the car batteries, but then we discovered it in Arkansas. So I
Yes.
think we're good on lithium now. I don't know.
Yes. Which, by the way, all of what we're talking about with Greenland, with Ukraine, with even, some of the other countries' raw material deals, we are self-sufficient in all of those minerals from an urban mining standpoint. We have all of
Oh
our
yeah.
needs if we actually urban mined our existing products.
Went remine the landfills, picked up the
Hmm.
trash, recycled better, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like literally the car batteries, the tool batteries. I love the cordless tool batteries that we have now. It's
Hmm.
fantastic. Those have lithium in them,
Oh yeah.
cobalt, nickel, all
Yeah.
of those,
Everything we need.
everything we need.
Then the processing becomes the real booger.
It does. Or is that a business opportunity?
I think it is a business opportunity as long as it doesn't burn the buildings down. So
Yes. Well, and on that note, please don't put those in the trash. That's how fires start.
oh yeah, no, please don't ever put your lithium ion batteries in trash because if they go through a shredder or they get punctured, they explode and it burns buildings down.
Agreed. And that includes musical greeting cards.
Really?
Think about it. How does the musical greeting card play?
I just I mean it has a battery. I hadn't thought about what type of battery though.
Yep, it's got a lithium battery in it. A
Mm.
little one, but it's got a little battery in it. And most people would think it's paper and they put it in the trash or the recycling.
And then it
But
goes to the shredder.
yes, exactly. They need to
Hmm.
pull that out and maybe, based on your location, you could walk down the street to a certain company and let them know they need to put a giant warning label on those products that
Yeah,
they're putting
contains
out.
lithium. Yeah. I know that I know of one that was publicized. One company had a huge fire because of a lithium ion battery last year. I'm sure there was many. Um, And when we were at a conference last year as well, some guy was up there talking about his shredder operation, and they had a couple small fires because the supplier, maybe it was a MRF, I don't know, wasn't
Mhm.
cleaning the lithium ion batteries out. They were, and they got a bad load in and burned the whole facility down. And you can't stop
Yeah.
those fires once they get going.
No, you can't. And that's a good example of when policy and legislators are intending for positive change, but are putting undue burden on the people that are recycling and handling products that were never designed to be recycled. So the original producers of the material are not being held responsible for then how they're winding back up in the supply chain and
Yeah,
causing damage.
yeah. I know there's a lot of efforts right now going into the car batteries, especially, right, with the hybrids and the EVs on how do we effectively recycle those. And I know
Mhm.
there's probably a lot of money being spent on figuring out a process to do that.
Oh, you should check out some of the insane amount of money that is being dropped into the EV hybrid battery recycling space. There are several, I'll call them startups, that is an insane term for the billions of dollars these companies have gotten,
Hmm.
that from a capacity standpoint, they are nowhere near going to be able to handle what's coming down the pipeline. So
Yeah,
again, there's opportunities there to
yeah,
be able to handle it. It's it's crazy.
it's crazy. It's a hard one to wrap your mind around.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the future is upon us now, and it's fun and it's exciting to see that things in this industry are changing, and it's not just get metal, melt metal anymore. And there's so many opportunities out there within the recycled materials space, you know, from the batteries to urban mining to, you know, fields full of cars.
Uh, yes.
It's
Yeah.
so much to do right now. So,
There
um,
really is.
I feel like there's been a lot of change in this industry. I know coming from the big construction space previously, there's parts of this industry that have been behind other industries, right? Just because it kind of laid low for so long. And one
Hmm.
one thing that I'm really thankful to see is such a big push for safety recently. PPE safety programs, that's really big for us. We do a lot of training. We do a lot of make sure everybody's got the right PPE. We do blood tests on our guys that are exposed to fumes regularly, respirator fit tests, stuff that wasn't even happening as recent as like 20 years ago, around the torches and stuff like that. People just sucking those fumes in, but it's catching up. The technology's catching up. The processes are catching up. It's really cool, and it's a neat time to be a part of the industry. It's changing
It,
and growing a lot.
it really is. The safety aspect of it is crucial. The country's largest steel mill company, I mean, that's their main focus. They've shut
Hmm.
down their entire system before if they've
Yeah,
had an accident. And it's because they take it serious to figure out
yeah,
what happened, what went wrong, and how to never have that happen
yeah.
again.
We have to because we're dealing with molten metal. We're dealing with thousands and thousands of tons at a time. We're dealing with flames, sharp things. I mean, there is nothing aside from maybe recycling paper. There is nothing delicate about the recycled materials industry. It's shredders. I mean, a shredder that can eat a car, you don't want to accidentally fall in that.
No. And, somewhat on that note, it's a personal theory of mine, but it is why I think George Lucas has some sort of relation to the metals industry because of everything that you just described. It pretty much is every Star Wars plot. Uh, it's from the scrappers, it's from the continuous casters. I mean, that is a lightsaber if you've ever seen one, right? Like cutting off hands. Like, I mean, it is a safety, like it's come on,
Yeah.
shredders, the compactor, it's a
Yeah.
whole.
I don't know. I grew up with a trash compactor in my house, like a little tiny residential size one, so that's always where my mind went. But I'll have to entertain that theory a little bit more. But
Yeah, Darth
if I
Vader goes
rewatch the whole
from
series through that mind,
You're
you know.
you're not gonna unsee you can't unsee it. I mean, Darth
Hmm.
Vader goes from planet to planet to planet mining for the Death Star.
Yeah,
Hmm.
man,
Just saying.
it's just
You're
saying it's
you're
there.
it's there. It's there. Mandalorians, literally
Yeah, I
Beskar
mean that's
steel.
Beskar. That's the best, right?
Right? It's the
It's the
best,
only option.
obviously.
Yeah, I've got
Clearly.
some of it. So,
Yeah. So
all right. Well, we fully digress now. So, uh, Jennifer, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much. I always love chatting with you, and your knowledge is so immense. Thank you for sharing with everybody, and continue to rock and roll and let everybody know the importance of the recycled materials industry.
thank you, Colin. It's been really wonderful getting to talk to you today, catch up with you, and I wish you continued success on your latest adventure and maybe, onto the latest and greatest Murph, perhaps, in
Ah,
your
yes,
next adventure.
definitely looking for the MRFs.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.